The NBA players have reached a decision to resume the NBA playoffs. There was doubt earlier this week after the Milwaukee Bucks boycotted Game 5 in response to the shooting of Jacob Blake by police in their home state of Wisconsin. The NBA then canceled the remainder of Wednesday's and Thursday's schedules, but yesterday the players voted there will be postseason basketball after all. All right, Nick, what was your reaction to how all of yesterday unfolded?
Well, listen, first and foremost, selfishly, I'm very glad the NBA is going to resume the season. And that is nothing to set apart from what they are working towards and what hopefully a critical mass of our country is working towards in making our nation a little more fair and a little more just. But speaking for myself, and I think for a lot of people, one of the few pieces of enjoyment I've gotten in 2020 is watching professional basketball, particularly the playoffs. And we were concerned for months we weren't going to get the playoffs, and then to have them, and then to potentially have them removed, it would have just been another gut punch in a year that's been full of them. And Brandon, I'll say that's for me, but also for the players. I do think, and they're very smart people. Michelle Roberts, Chris Paul, LeBron James, everybody in leadership positions knows this, but I don't know if the audience does. If they had walked, the repercussions of that could have been felt for years. It would have voided the CBA, that owners would have almost assuredly locked the players out. We all of a sudden, we could be in a position where we weren't just not getting this year's playoffs. We might have been in a position where we weren't getting next year's season. And so while I understand what the players are fighting for, it would have been such a drastic step, and I don't want to call it impulsive, but they would have had to make it so quickly in just a matter of hours from we're playing to we're not playing, that I think it's best for the league, the players, and the fans, obviously, Brandon, that the games are coming back.
Yeah, Nick, I'm right there with you. I was relieved when the news broke that the NBA was going to return to play. But for your first point, Nick, I mean, 2020 is hard for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're this big real estate man or woman, powerful person in business that can travel the world and do so many things. Well, you can't now. You can't travel. You can't go to your favorite restaurants. Like, if I'm being just brutally honest, life sucks for everyone in 2020. And basketball, sports, entertainment has always been a place to escape. So I was relieved there because we need some place to go. And then I think about this. This is not their job. It is their responsibility to do well with their platform, but it's not their job. There are people, men and women, who get paid to do the things that they're doing now. So I don't like this whole narrative and this whole approach now that, it's the athlete's job, the NFL player, the WNBA player, the NBA player's job. Yep. Correct. That's not right. This is I want them to get back to doing what they love. Right. So selfishly, yes, we need that escape, but get back to doing what you love.
Sure. Kevin, what was your reaction to everything that happened yesterday?
My reaction was one of great empathy, and in the same ballpark as Brandon, I was taken aback by some of the comments that I saw online. And one of the things I saw multiple times was, what is this going to do? What is this protest going to do? And I had two reactions to that. One, my first reaction was just to dismiss those comments out of hand, that those people should just be written off. If you don't get it, you don't get it, and just be written off. And then I thought, my other side was like, well, maybe that is coming from a place of a lack of understanding. And I wanted to illustrate what I think these protests have done, what we know and what we don't know. So what we know, and this goes back to Kaepernick, that changed the tenor of policing reform around the country. And there's countless. This is from American Progress, and there's lots, but I'm just going to illustrate a few. to make my point. Sacramento City Council approved an inspector general to investigate police misconduct. Washington, D.C. passed legislation, bans the hiring of officers with a history of misconduct. New York City launched a database to track discipline cases. Utah's governor put a ban on chokeholds. Olympia, Washington now dispatches crisis responders to nonviolent situations. So if anyone says, I don't know if any of those things happen without a change in attitude in the country, that of course is built on the backs of Bill Russell and Muhammad Ali, but most recently Colin Kaepernick. So I think those are things that we know that we can point to, that if you're in the comment section, these are real things that are happening, and that's why these protests matter. The other part of this is a little bit more of a creative thinking exercise. And you're not going to hear anything like this in any other sports show. And it's going to be a little bit weird, but I trust you. Trust me, if you get through this next 2 minute story, Nick, and I'll use you as a barometer, I think it will help put the protests in a historical sense. Because right now, I said yesterday that these protests, we're making history, but we're right there. We're 24 hours later. We're too close to it. We don't know what it is. And Stephen Johnson wrote a great book. It's called How We Got to Now. And he has this chapter on clean. And this is you got to follow me here. Chapter on clean describes a cholera outbreak in London. And a guy named Jon Snow, not Jon Snow from Game of Thrones, just a guy named Jon Snow. Everybody thought it was in the air. Jon Snow did some research, was the first epidemiologist, said, you know what, it's not in the air, it's in water. And he traced it to a water pump and basically solved cholera and helped propel germ theory and made clean drinking water the foundation of health. From there, people are like, all right, how do we get clean drinking water? How do we kill bacteria in the water? Okay, we get chlorine. Once you got chlorine, you know what you can get? Swimming pools. And then there's a bunch of swimming pools. You didn't have swimming pools. They're called moats. We get a bunch of swimming pools. Then there's a drought in California. And get Tony Hawk's walking by and said, oh, that swimming pool's drained because there's a drought. I'm going to skateboard in it. So it's a long way of saying the guy who discovered cholera and cured cholera also, in a way, made Tony Hawk skateboard. So the reason why I tell this story is this. We saw a historic moment yesterday, but you have no way of knowing how that historic moment is going to reverberate through history.
Exactly right.
Unless you can tell me what my son is going to be in 50 years. When we're looking at the TV and says, Dad, why does it say I'm a man? Why does it say education reform? Why does it say your name? And he's 6 years old. So unless you can tell me what my son is going to be like and how his life is changing in 60 years old, you can't say that these protests are not doing anything. There's specific legislation happening, and the future is brighter because of what the NBA players did yesterday.
Well, Wilds, if I'm the barometer, I give that an A+. I think it was you could follow it perfectly, and I was excited to follow you down the path. That's first of all. Second of all, I'll tell you what in the micro and then in the macro what yesterday did. Here's what the micro did. Brandon Marshall, a few weeks ago, was racially profiled, at least I believe, and had the cops called him for no good reason. He kept that story to himself or only told the closest people around him. Yesterday, because we were doing the show we were doing, instead of talking about Lakers Blazers, he told that story publicly. He then shared the video. Right. And there is a real chance that moved some people. I shared, my stories of parenting, my family. And there's a chance that moved some people. So that is filling up the awareness bucket. So there's two, when it comes to issues, and it might be easier for people to think about it like this. Police brutality, think about it as an epidemic. You use a somewhat messy metaphor. Think of breast cancer. Breast cancer for a long time was stigmatized, didn't have the proper funding, people didn't totally understand it. So there was a massive campaign for what? Breast cancer awareness. And we have gotten to a point to where the breast cancer awareness bucket is basically full. People are very aware of it. And now you start filling up the breast cancer treatment bucket, the best breast cancer cure bucket. And that is where I believe the NBA players are trying to move this. That's why they're calling attorney generals. That's why they're calling state legislatures. Okay, 5 months ago, no one knew what qualified immunity was. Now, check the Google trends. It went from never being Googled to being Googled all the time. So now awareness has been raised. But now that people are aware of this issue, for those folks that actually think it's an issue, don't think it's a quality attribute of policing, now we need to move it to action. And so that's what I think the NBA guys are trying to do. You can't do it overnight. But even if it is just Brandon's story gets told, the story I told, the story, we've seen it from so many guys that were on television yesterday, did great jobs with it. Chris Webber's, all of it. Even if it's just that, there is a benefit from it. But the real benefit comes when action comes. And maybe, maybe I'm naive and maybe I'm an optimist, but I do believe some of that action has already come to Wild's point, Jenna, and I do believe more could be coming down the road over the next not just few months, but years.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.